What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Running back rankings adjustments, where I'll be going over which running backs have changed the most in my latest rankings update, and also where I have them ranked now, and why they changed, why they've moved in my rankings. But first, we got to do the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat: which running back had at least 55 targets but was unable to crack 100 PPR points? The answer was Chris Thompson. Winner was James Sosinski. Today's stat: there were 6 tight ends with 12 or more deep targets last season: Travis Kelce, Eric Ebron, George Kittle, David Njoku, Rob Gronkowski, and who was the 6th? All right, let's talk about some running backs, and we're going to start things off with Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke has moved up from my running back 4 up to my running back 1. We no longer have the risk of suspension due to that incident at the music festival. There was at least the risk that he missed a game or two, and that's why he was a little bit further back. I believe I had him at 5 1 point, but as soon as that came out, I moved him back up to 1. So unless he does something else stupid, he should be good to go for all the games this season. Zeke has averaged 95 rushing yards per game over his first 3 years with 0.85 touchdowns per game. Last season, he scored just 6 rushing touchdowns, and he's a massive part of the Cowboys offense, and he's heavily involved in the red zone. So we can expect more rushing touchdowns than we saw last season. He was 8th in carries inside the 20 and 18th in carries inside the 5. But we look at the season before. He was 6th in carries inside the 20 and 12th in carries inside the 5, playing just 10 games. Remember, he had the suspension 2 seasons ago. Last season was an outlier from the touchdown perspective, given the volume he received. So we can expect positive touchdown regression to go with his already massive yardage and reception floor. He's an extremely safe pick and a guy that I want to take first overall. Quan Barkley, you heard me talk about in Friday's video, has moved from my running back 1 to my running back 4. And while obviously you're still elite if you're my running back 4, he's not going there. So I won't be having him this season because there's no way he ends up as running back 4 in drafts. Why I moved him down is simply just he's set to see regression, and the offense is set to be worse than it was last season. He overperformed from a yards per carry standpoint. You know, if we played that season out a million times, and his yards per carry is lower than it was more often than not. So he's set to see less yardage on a per play basis, and there's really no room for his total volume to increase. And now you look, and the team's projected to decrease from around league average. They were league average offense last season to the bottom 10. That likely means less plays, and it means less touchdowns. That's just not an ideal situation for the number 1 pick. He's still going to be a running back 1. You know, this is the exact same situation we saw with David Johnson last season. David Johnson finished as running back 9, but he was a bust. So I'm moving him down to my running back 4 because it's very difficult for him to produce top overall value in that offense. He still can. He could absolutely finish 1, but it's less likely. So I'm moving him down to 4. Melvin Gordon, I've only moved him from running back 6 to running back 7, which isn't a big move at all. And I'm honestly probably going to put him back once his contract situation gets resolved. If you didn't hear, he's demanding that he gets a new contract from the Chargers, and he's going to hold out until he does so. My best guess is that they give him the new contract. You know, it's not smart from an organizational standpoint moving forward, but they're set up for a Super Bowl run this season. So I'd be very surprised if they just don't pay him. You know, they finally have everyone healthy, so this is the best chance they've had in years. And so they don't want to screw that up for a contract situation on a guy who's going to been a very pivotal part of that offense. So I expect him to get that contract done. Where will it be in the offseason? That I don't know. I do expect it to be something they make a priority. So I don't think we're going to go into the beginning of the season getting it not resolved. But obviously, the longer the holdout, the bigger the risk he has for an injury, and the bigger the risk, obviously, if you're drafting, he has that they don't even sign it. So until he signs it, he's not running back 7. But I do think you can still draft him because I do think they are still going to give him the contract. Marlon Mack up to my running back 7, and that's 1 above ECR and 4 above ADP. Mack just has so much going for him this season. The Colts have the 5th best projected offensive line, and they should be a top 5 to 7 offense in points per game, if not better. Mack averaged 110 rushing yards per game in weeks where he had 15 or more carries last season, and he has absolutely no one challenging him for the touches. He's an elite athlete, was a plus receiver in college, and he's still just 23 years old. He's set up to have a monster season. He has my 6th highest rushing yardage projection and my 5th highest rushing touchdown projection. If you want to see my exact projection on Mack, along with my exact projection on all players, my rankings as they change, and my player notes on all players, then be sure to check out our draft package at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's it on Mac. On to Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny moves up to my running back 25, and that's 7 above ECR and 8 above ADP. You guys heard me discuss why I'm down on Chris Carson in Friday's video, but it's not that I don't think Carson's great. Carson is awesome. But I do think Penny's at worst just as talented as Chris Carson. And Chris Carson has a very concerning injury history. He hasn't played a full season since he was a junior in high school. He's suffered some major injuries during that time. He just can't stay healthy. Carson could 100% prove me wrong and just ball out this season. But I think Penny is going to pick up most, if not all, of what Mike Davis had last season. And when you combine that with his talent and his projected opportunity potential, if Carson goes down, then he's an absolute steal in drafts right now. So I had to move him up to running back 25. A guy I moved down is Phillip Lindsey. And he's now my running back 26, 4 below ECR and ADP, so not significantly below where he's going. And I have my concerns with Phillip Lindsey. He's a really good running back, but the Broncos are just not going to be good this season, and Freeman isn't going anywhere. He was great last season, but he was only given over 15 carries in 3 games, and his touchdown rate's likely to regress. He scored 9 times in under 200 carries. And he's also pretty likely to see less carries than he did last season, assuming Freeman gets healthy. So he can absolutely pay off his ADP, but I just don't like where he's going. I'd be fine in that mid-5th round range, but he's never available at that spot. So it's just a pass for me. I think he's a good running back. I think he's going to have a fine season. The volume just isn't there, and the offense just isn't good enough. So I don't like him where he's going in drafts. Latavius Murray, I actually bumped down a few spots to running back 29, which is still 4 spots above ECR and 7 above ADP. I had him a little higher than this, but assuming that Alvin Kamara stays healthy, and there's no reason to believe he won't, he stayed healthy through his career, then he's probably worth taking in that mid-30s for running back range. So since there's a chance that Kamara does go down, he just crushes, he does need to be ranked higher than that because he's going to get, work regardless. But if Kamara does go down, it's just monstrous what his ceiling is. When you do out the projection though, when you look at how many touchdowns, how many touches he's projected to see, I'm cool taking him more in this 28 to 32 range than I am in the mid to early 20s for running back. So I had to bump him back a little bit because we can't just assume Kamara's going to get hurt. And if Kamara doesn't get hurt, this is more where he should be, not earlier in the 20s. So I like taking him still. Absolutely love it because of the upside, but just a little bit later than I did before. Also, if you watched Friday's video, you saw Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram down now to my running back 32. That's 8 spots below ECR and 9 spots below ADP. And based on my projections, I just had to move him down. If Hill were to get injured, then I can justify taking him where he's going. But unless that happens, he's being overvalued. You can only divvy up 100% of the opportunity share. So unless you think Dixon and Edwards are going to see combined less than 4 carries per game, that Lamar Jackson is also going to turn into a pocket passer, and that they would draft Hill this early, him being this good, and give him less than 5 carries per game, that's all what needs to happen. Not one of them. All of that needs to happen in order for him to be worth where his ADP is right now. And I just can't justify that. The only way that those things don't happen and he pays off is if he gets massive touchdown luck. And I'm not willing to draft a guy who needs massive touchdown luck, especially when he's got Lamar Jackson as his quarterback who's going to vulture, 7, 8, 9 touchdowns this season. I'm not doing that. So no for me on Mark Ingram still. Darius Geis, another guy I moved down to running back 37. That's 7 spots below ECR and 9 spots below ADP. And this is a response to not only the difficult situation that he was already in, but now the hamstring injury. We don't really know anything about it, and I don't think it's that bad of an injury. I don't think it's that massive of a problem, but he was already going to split early down work with Chris Thompson getting 3rd down. So you've got a guy in a terrible offense going to split only the early down work, and now he's got a hamstring injury. Nah, I'm going to pass on that. So he's down to running back 35, and I'm just not going to touch him this season. A guy I am going to probably be drafting more often now that I think about it is Duke Johnson. And I moved Duke Johnson up to my running back 39, and that's 11 spots above ECR and 11 spots above ADP. And I'm starting to warm up to him this season. Let's run through the possible scenarios of Duke Johnson. These are all the things that could happen. I'm not talking about injuries. We all know the trade talk, right? That's what has people concerned, and also Kareem Hunt. Like, those are the two situations where people are like, I don't even know what to expect from Duke Johnson. Let's walk through them. So scenario one is the worst scenario. It's that he never gets traded and that Kareem Hunt comes in and his role is just diminished. So you would get a guy for the first 8 weeks of the season as the third down back on an elite offense. Then his value would plummet. Scenario two is that he opens the season with the Browns but then gets traded once Hunt's close to returning. In that scenario, you'll have a third down back on an elite offense for a good chunk of the season, and then you'll have a talented running back on a team that wants him. Like, you don't trade for a running back you don't want to use. The final scenario is that they trade him before the season even starts, where he goes to a team that wants to use him for the entire season. He's currently being valued as the first scenario, in which case he's a solid pick because he's going to give you decent value for the first half of the season. You might be able to trade him at some point. But if either of the other two were to happen, then he's being severely undervalued. And since those are in his range of outcomes, and honestly probably the more likely of the outcomes, you got to target him in the late portion of the draft. So he's going way too late in drafts, had to move him up. And the final running back we'll talk about is Justice Hill. I have him at running back 45. That's 20 spots above ECR and 8 spots above ADP. He's just an amazing late round flyer. Baltimore's a run first offense. Their system will produce a high yards per carry for the running backs. He's a very explosive runner, and he's capable of handling a large workload. If something were to happen to Mark Ingram, he had a handful of games in college with 30 or more carries. Don't just look at his weight and tell me that he can't handle a workload. He was given 300 touches as a sophomore at Oklahoma State, and the kid beat out Chris Carson as a freshman. He's a great running back, and he can absolutely handle an NFL workload. So he can absolutely beat out Mark Ingram at some point this season. I think that is going to happen. So getting him at the back half of drafts is an absolute steal. But that's it. That's it for this one. Those are all of the running backs that have kind of shifted a little bit in my rankings. I'm sure I'll do another video like this for the position in August, and I'll do it for the wide receiver position as well. So make sure, if you want to see all of our rankings, all of our projections and notes, head on over to our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Get our draft package, least expensive draft package in the entire industry. But that's the end of this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, how about you hit that like button? If you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? And thanks for watching.